All right, let's pull back the curtain on a blueprint for societal collapse. We're going to examine the architects of the abyss, the forces that dismantle a civilization, both from the outside in and from the inside out. And our case study? The perfectly named Abbey of Safety, a society built on a fundamental lie, offering what is, in truth, a gilded cage instead of any real sanctuary. You know, the Abbey isn't a shelter. It's a monument to manage decay. Its people have willingly, consciously, traded with the source material calls the lightning of existence for a dim, utterly predictable comfort. That ebony clock tower you see, it doesn't just mark the hours, it's tolling for souls who've chosen the slow, velvet gloom over the chaos and, frankly, the vitality of a genuine life. So, at the very heart of all this decay is what's called the Pharisees' paradox. This describes a society that is obsessed with form, with procedure, with doing everything just right. But underneath all that surgical precision, there's a profound spiritual emptiness. The motions of life are perfectly preserved, sure, but life itself, it packed up and left a long, long time ago. Now, this decay isn't driven by simple apathy, not at all. It's governed by a very active philosophy, the logic of zero. Think of it like a societal death drive, a deep, underlying desire to just erase the self, to dissolve back into a state of no tension, no struggle, and ultimately, no being. It's a longing for peace, yeah? But it's the peace of the void. So this, right here, is the Gilded Cage, a society trapped within an architecture of its own making, meticulously managing its own decline. It yearns for what the Source calls the sovereignty of silence, that final moment when the last flicker of being is finally snuffed out. But that silence, it's not going to arrive quietly. The stagnant air of the Abbey is about to be completely shattered. An outside force is on its way, one that has absolutely no regard for their polite rituals or their carefully constructed lies. A force of pure, raw, uncompromising truth. And here he is, the daemon of truth. He's not a product of the Abbey's rot. He's something else entirely, an external, objective judge. He hasn't come to participate in the charade. He's here to end it. He is the physical embodiment of the very void the residents have been so desperately trying to ignore. So how does he work? Well, the daemon functions as the ultimate not-self, a perfect, dark mirror that reflects the Abbey's terminal sickness right back at it. He acts like a philosophical acid, literally dissolving the polite falsehoods that hold this whole fragile society together. His purpose isn't to persuade anyone. It's to force a blight of revelation, a painful, unavoidable collision with the truth. And he acts with absolute finality. The Source describes his motion as the terminal shutter, like the closing of a camera lens for the very last time. He brings down his gavel, and in that single explosive moment, he unleashes the fire of dismantlement. And with this one violent act, the daemon's gavel shatters everything. The so-called architecture of stagnation cracks wide open, and all the polite lies just evaporate. The strike doesn't just expose a weakness. It reveals that the Abbey's foundation was never anything but the raw vacuum of the void all along. But the daemon, he's only one of the architects of his end. As an outside invader, he exposes the rot. But the Abbey's decay has also given birth to its own undertakers, internal forces that offer a very different path to the exact same conclusion. And here's where we meet the shadow saviors, agents born from the decay itself. On one hand, you have the Red Spectre, also called the Reaper. He's the surgeon of the silence, quietly gathering up the broken shards of identity. On the other hand, you've got the Uncanny Jester, or the Mirror. He acts as a silent witness, simply forcing the inhabitants to confront their own rotting reflections, but without any judgment or violence. Now, unlike the demon's violent judgment, their goal is to offer a gift, the Crimson Gift. And what is it? It's the permission to finally surrender. They don't force a revelation, they facilitate a choice. They're like midwives to the abyss, helping these weary souls finally let go and embrace that systematic return to the inorganic. And this is the crucial difference, right here. The daemon's method is a shocking, violent act of judgment from the outside. The shadow saviors, though, they work from within, guiding the Abbey's inhabitants toward a quiet, systematic surrender. They don't shatter the illusion, they just gently help it dissolve on its own. Let's just put them side by side. The daemon, he's an external judge, uses a violent gavel strike for a forced, shocking revolution. The saviors, on the other hand, are internal archetypes of the decay itself. They use a systematic, quiet return to achieve a peaceful eclipse of identity. Both are architects of the end, for sure, but their tools, their blueprints, fundamentally different. So, whether it's by the gavel strike or by the gentle gift, the floor of the abbey is broken. And this brings us to the ultimate existential question. What's underneath it all? What happens when the gilded cage is finally, truly gone? The answer is, well, it's uncanny. There are no foundations, no cellars. Beneath the abbey is the exact same desolate, Gothic wasteland that exists outside its walls. And that's the ultimate revelation, isn't it? The abbey was never a sanctuary from the void. It was just a localized, decorated corner of it. So at this point, with the truth totally revealed, every soul inside faces what the source calls the choice of the hourglass. It's a final existential trial. The sand is running out, and a decision has to be made between two completely opposing ways of existence. Here they are, the two paths. You've got the logic of zero, which offers the profound peace of non-being, a surrender to the grace of the abyss. And then you have the logic of one. This offers the fire of becoming, the struggle, the affirmation of your own life, your own history, flaws and all. It's really a choice between the grace of nothingness and the sovereign triumph of existence. And this reveals that the whole dismantlement, it wasn't the end. It was merely the catalyst for an ultimate philosophical decision. To surrender and find peace in the void, or to embrace the struggle and become. And for the people of the Abbey, who've been practicing for this exact moment their entire lives, the choice is pretty simple. They accept the crimson gift from the Shadow Saviors, they willingly embrace the logic of zero, choosing the peace of non-being that they had always craved deep down. But that is not the only possible outcome. The source introduces a defiant counter-argument, a figure known as the Wanderer, or the Overman. This is the sovereign individual who witnesses the exact same abyss and fundamentally refuses to surrender. The Wanderer takes that same destructive force that the daemon unleashed, that fire of dismantlement, and he transforms it. For him, it's not an execution, it's a crucible. It becomes a fire that forges dignity, proving that meaning isn't found by avoiding the void, but by affirming yourself in spite of it. And this brings us to our final lingering thought. The Abbey's inhabitants find a certain kind of grace in their surrender. The Wanderer, however, finds dignity in the struggle. The question that's left for us to ponder is this: which one is the greater triumph?